Welcome to the Forgotten America podcast, where shadows whisper and lost histories return. From Native American legends to Appalachian folklore, from Amish secrets to Cajun mysteries, we explore the vanished peoples and forgotten stories that shaped a nation. These are not just tales of fear, but echoes of culture, memory, and survival. Step with us into the eerie and the profound. This is Forgotten America Podcast. The Wendigo legend, fear and survival in Native America. Of all the monsters that haunt the dark corners of the North American continent, none is so chilling, so psychologically complex, or so deeply rooted in the terror of the land itself as the Wendigo. It is not merely a creature, it is a concept, a disease of the soul, a chilling allegory born from the deepest, most primal fears of survival in a world of endless white and whispering pines. Imagine, if you will, the northern woods of Minnesota or the vast, lonely expanses of the Canadian boreal forest. The year is 1878. The air is so cold it feels solid, a sharp, crystalline pain in the lungs with every breath. The snow lies in deep, unbroken drifts, a blinding white shroud over the world, and the silence is absolute, broken only by the groan of a tree limb heavy with ice or the distant, mournful cry of a wolf. A lone trapper, a man of European descent named Swift, huddles in a makeshift lean-to. His fire is meager, his food pouch empty. For days he has seen no game. His hunger is no longer a pang in his stomach. It is a constant, gnawing presence, a living thing inside him. He begins to notice things. A strange, foul odor on the wind, like rotting meat and corruption. Unidentifiable tracks, too large for any bear, with long, cruel claws. And a sound, faint at first, then growing closer. A high, keening wail that sounds almost human, but twisted into something unspeakable. It is a sound of infinite hunger and bottomless cold. He peers into the stark black lattice of the trees, his heart hammering against his ribs. For a moment, the wind shifts, the clouds part, and the moon illuminates a figure standing 50 yards away. It is emaciated to the point of being a walking skeleton, its skin stretched taut and gray over its bones. Its eyes are sunk deep in its skull, burning with a pale phosphorescent light. And its mouth is a bloody smear, lips torn and ragged as if from a too large, too violent meal. It lets out that wail again, a sound that seems to say, "I am so hungry." The trapper knows, in that instant of pure, undiluted terror, what he is looking at. He has heard the Cree and Ojibwe stories around trading post fires. He has dismissed them as savage superstition. But now, in the starving, frozen dark, he knows the Wendigo is real. This encounter, and others like it, were documented in journals and colonial records, often with a tone of bewildered horror. But to understand the Wendigo is to understand that the European trapper's literal physical monster is only the surface of a far deeper and more terrifying cultural truth. The Wendigo, or Wendigo in Ojibwe, Witikoo in Cree, is not just a monster you meet in the woods. It is a monster that becomes you. It is the ultimate taboo, the embodiment of winter, famine, and the sin of cannibalism. A concept so powerful it shaped the social and spiritual fabric of the Algonquian-speaking peoples for centuries. To trace the origins of the Wendigo is to delve into a belief system forged in the crucible of survival. The Algonquian peoples, including the Ojibwe, Cree, Algonquian, Innu, and others, inhabited the subarctic regions, a landscape of breathtaking beauty and brutal austerity. Winters were long and merciless. Game could be scarce. The threat of starvation was a constant, spectral presence at the feast. In such an environment, community was everything. The values of generosity, sharing, and moderation were not mere pleasantries. They were the very pillars of survival. To hoard resources, to put one's own needs above the tribe's, was a dangerous antisocial act. And the greatest, most unthinkable violation of this sacred covenant was cannibalism. In a world where everyone is hungry, the line between person and protein is the final frontier of humanity. To cross it is to renounce your own. The Wendigo mythos is, at its heart, a powerful social prohibition against this ultimate act of selfishness. It is a cautionary tale that externalizes the internal temptation. You don't just choose to eat human flesh, you are possessed by the Wendigo spirit. The myth provides a framework for understanding how a person, weakened by hunger and isolation, could commit such an atrocity. It wasn't just them, it was a monstrous force that corrupted them. The transformation is a key part of the horror. The Wendigo is not a separate species, it is a human who has succumbed. The process is described in visceral, physiological terms. The initial act of cannibalism is like ingesting a demonic poison. It creates an insatiable craving for more human flesh. But no matter how much it eats, the Wendigo is never full. Its hunger is a metaphysical curse, a spiritual void that can never be filled. To fuel this endless craving, the creature's body undergoes a horrific metamorphosis. It grows to monstrous size, sometimes described as 15 feet tall or higher, yet it remains emaciated, its body a testament to the starvation that created it. Its skin turns a sallow, yellowish gray, pulled tight against its protruding bones. Its eyes recede into its skull, glowing like embers. Its lips are often described as chewed away or missing entirely, a grotesque reminder of its uncontrollable feasting. Its heart is said to be made of ice, the ultimate symbol of its cold, inhuman nature. And it is accompanied by a constant, bitter cold and the stench of decay and corruption. This connection to winter is paramount. The Wendigo is the spirit of the north wind, the deep freeze that kills the crops and drives the game away. It is the hunger that gnaws at the belly during the long, dark months. In many stories, the Wendigo's approach is heralded by a sudden, unnatural drop in temperature or a violent blizzard. It is winter, personified as a predator. The folklore is rich with tales that serve as both entertainment and moral instruction. One common story type involves a hunter or a small group who become lost and stranded during a winter hunt. As their food runs out and desperation sets in, one of them, often the weakest-willed or the most selfish, begins to suggest the unthinkable. They might start by looking at their companions not as brothers or sisters, but as meat. The transformation begins subtly, then accelerates after the first horrific meal. The new Wendigo then turns on its former companions, its humanity utterly erased. Another potent narrative involves the Wendigo as a spiritual disease that can infect a whole community. In these stories, a person might return from a solitary hunting trip acting strangely, depressed, paranoid, and complaining of a constant chill. They might develop an aversion to heat or traditional food. This was seen as the early stages of Wendigo psychosis, and it required immediate intervention from a medicine person. The The community had to be protected. This brings us to a crucial and often misunderstood aspect of the legend: Wendigo psychosis. In the early 20th century, Western anthropologists and psychiatrists became fascinated by the concept. They documented cases, primarily among Algonquian communities, of individuals who genuinely believed they were turning into Wendigos. They would experience intense cravings for human flesh, feel their bodies growing cold, and report feeling a monstrous presence taking them over. The most famous and hotly debated case is that of a Cree man named Swift Runner. In the winter of 1878, near Fort Saskatchewan, Canada, Swift Runner's family starved to death. He survived. When authorities found him, he was healthy and well-fed, and the remains of his family were nearby, butchered and consumed. At his trial, he confessed, claiming a Wendigo spirit had possessed him and commanded him to eat his wife and 5 children. He was executed, and his case became a cornerstone for the argument that Wendigo psychosis was a genuine, culture-bound syndrome, a unique form of madness shaped by the beliefs and environmental pressures of a specific culture. However, modern scholars and indigenous commentators urge extreme caution here. Labeling it a psychosis can be reductive and pathologizing, framing a complex spiritual and cultural belief system through a narrow Western medical lens. It risks turning a profound myth into a simple symptom of madness. Many argue that true cases of individuals believing they were Wendigos were exceedingly rare. More often, the concept was used as a social and legal tool. An individual who exhibited antisocial, greedy, or violent behavior, especially hoarding resources during a famine, might be accused of being Wendigo possessed. This was a way for the community to identify and neutralize a threat to its collective survival. The diagnosis, delivered by a shaman, could lead to a terrifying outcome: execution. The only way to kill a Wendigo was to melt its icy heart, which usually meant burning it to ashes. This was done not out of cruelty, but out of necessity, to purify the community and prevent the spiritual contagion from spreading. The figure of the Wendigo killer, or the shaman who could confront the creature, is a hero in these stories. These individuals possessed deep spiritual knowledge and strength to face the embodiment of taboo. Their battles were not just physical, but spiritual, fought with sacred herbs, prayers, and rituals designed to drive out the Wendigo spirit and, if possible, save the human soul trapped inside. The symbolism of the Wendigo is staggeringly powerful and, tragically, evergreen. On a literal level, it is the fear of cannibalism, but its metaphorical resonance expands far beyond that. The Wendigo is the personification of unchecked greed, consumption, and selfishness. It is the insatiable appetite that consumes and consumes but is never satisfied. In its endless hunger, it destroys the very world around it and ultimately itself. Think about that description. Does it remind you of anything? The parallels to modern society are unsettling. The Wendigo is the spirit of colonialism, of corporations that strip mine the earth without thought for the future, of a consumer culture that is never satisfied, always craving more. It is the greed that seeks to hoard wealth while others starve. The environmentalist and author Robin Wall Kimmerer, a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, has written brilliantly about this. She posits that the Wendigo myth is a prophetic warning about a culture of consumption. The Wendigo, she argues, is a mythic landscape of the mind, created by a culture that understood the dangers of excess. We are now living in a world ruled by the Wendigo spirit. We are devouring our own future, consuming the very resources that sustain us, and feeling a spiritual emptiness that material goods cannot fill. The Wendigo has, inevitably, been appropriated into popular culture. It features in horror movies, video games, and novels, most famously in Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Often, These interpretations get the details wrong, turning the Wendigo into a generic werewolf-like creature or a frozen zombie. They take the shell of the monster, but strip it of its profound cultural and psychological meaning. This dilution is a form of cultural erosion, turning a sacred, terrifying allegory into just another bump in the night. For the Algonquian peoples, the Wendigo is not a joke or a campfire story. It is a living part of their cultural memory and spiritual understanding. While the fear of literal winter starvation has receded for many, the lesson of the Wendigo is more relevant than ever. It is a story about the dangers of isolation, of abandoning community, of letting hunger, whether for food, for power, or for possessions, consume our humanity. So, the next time you feel a sudden chill on a warm night or hear a branch crack in the silent woods, the old stories might whisper in the back of your mind. But the true terror of the Wendigo isn't that it might be lurking out there in the wilderness. The true, enduring horror is the recognition that the seed of the Wendigo sleeps within every human heart. It is the capacity for infinite wanting. It is the part of us that, in a moment of extreme weakness or overwhelming greed, could choose to put its own hunger above the lives of others. The frozen, skeletal figure with eyes of fire and a heart of ice is not just a monster from a forgotten history. It is a mirror, and it asks us the most uncomfortable question of all. In a world that constantly urges us to consume more, to want more, to take more, how do we keep our own inner Wendigo at bay? How do we ensure that our hungers, our ambitions, our consumption do not transform us into the very monster we most fear? The wind howls, the snow falls, and the question hangs in the frozen air, waiting for an answer.